Embodied social justice. I just like putting those three words together. It's such a difficult process to go inside ourselves and discover our personal relationship to privilege, to oppression, to compassion for others, and compassion for ourselves. How do we balance all those out? I think it takes a lot of discernment for each one. And they unfold over time. I've been looking at these issues all my life because I am half Armenian and half German. So the Armenian side, was massacred. My grandparents were fled the massacre of the Ottoman Empire. And on the German side, there's the history of the Holocaust, although my family was already in this country before World War I or World War II. But nonetheless, there's that sense, I actually have a very strong sense of associating Germans with perpetrators, and I identify with being Armenian. I don't identify with being German, both because of the perpetrating and oppressed aspects of those two peoples, but also because it's just the culture. My Armenian family was very inclusive, and it's a strange culture. There's a lot of aggression, but there's a lot of aggressive love and compassion there too. So I identified with that, and the Germanic side of the family was cold and actively oppressive to my Armenian father. He was a dirty immigrant to them. And because, even though they'd been in this country for generations, they were busy trying to get over immigrant status. And they had experienced depression during World War II. My mother was called a dirty kraut by her classmates. So, it's a weird mix of background for me. And to add to the mix, I grew up partially in New York and partially in Virginia. And in New York, I feel like I fit in. I don't think about ethnicity. Most people assume I'm Jewish. A lot of people know about Armenia in New York City. In Virginia, we were, not only too dark, but also an unknown minority. So they had a special meeting to decide to not include us in certain social situations. And I got a lot of teasing as a child, and I definitely felt the shame and the hiding of being a minority, of being without a group also. I was definitely way too white for the black kids, even though I'd look over there with longing and feel like, can I come in? And subtly too dark for the white kids. Even though that was an unconscious process for them. So, they made fun of me when we were little, and then as we got older, they, like to use the word exotic or different. So how do we all embody our unique processes of privilege and oppression in terms of privilege, I had a lot of privilege. At times, my family had money. My parents had postgraduate degrees. I expected to succeed in whatever career I chose. So there was a certain push in that. And, I pushed my chest forward, to assert that right. And then at the same time, there was the shame of not fitting in and hiding and feeling different and feeling paranoid. And there was also then the reverse, where I'd collapse down, I'd pull in with my heart. And there was a traumatic element to that of just dissociation and withdrawal, avoidance. And I can feel it now as I speak about it, just this dorsal vagal kind of immobilizing, depressing, getting ready to shut down, quieting in my heart rate and voice. And so, it's a weird mix in me and in so many of us of how do we embody our privilege and our strength, and how do we embody our oppression and our dissociation. And then how do we go beyond those two into some sense of self-compassion and then let that transmute into compassion and belief in justice for us all. Growing up in Virginia during the time of Jim Crow, I witnessed horrible things. And I felt bad to the degree that I was seen as white. I felt bad and guilty and responsible. And I felt also scared to the degree that I didn't feel white. And frightened for my own safety at times from white supremacist violence. And I feel that same mix now. I feel, on the one hand, guilty for my safety and financial safety that I've worked hard to achieve, and yet, I want to give more to others that are less fortunate. And I definitely recognize that being partially white, or whatever you want to call it, as Ta-Nehisi Coates says, people that believe they are white, I think I partially believe I'm white. I partially believe that I'm safe, that I'm going to pass, that I'm going to, not be attacked for nothing, for the color of my skin. I've talked back to police in my life. I don't feel afraid of being attacked by the police. And I'm very grateful to that on one hand, and I want it for everybody on the other hand. So, how do we in the body-mind world just keep going deeply into our own process and learning about that so that we can bring it into our world as more empathy, more compassion, more awareness. I do believe the work starts with us, with each of us. And it doesn't seem to end. I don't seem to find an end within myself. I just have to keep looking more and more deeply. I watched Arthur Jafa's Love is the Message recently. And it's a beautiful 7.5-minute film, very, very sad. And a young woman in it says, what if the world loved Black people as much as it loves Black culture? And yeah, I think that's a good question for us all to ask and feel into our relationship with it. Thank you.